so we definitely gonna have more questions for you.
Yeah.
Imam Perry, how did...
Imam Bryant.
Oh, I'm sorry. I had Perry on my mind. Imam Bryant, good brother. So, tell us a little bit about your journey and how you're at this point right now. Did you grow up always being of the Muslim faith? Is this something you learned over time? And were there any challenges that you had throughout the way?
So I'm Gareth Bryant. I'm a chaplain imam by profession. I work in healthcare. One of the focuses of my healthcare is what I presented and defended research about pertaining to the difference between demon possession and mental illness. So I presented this research at Michigan State University's Department of Psychiatry. So this is a department of about like 50 professors. So they peer reviewed it, they accepted it. And then I was invited by Cambridge University in the UK to defend and present my research there. And I did that the summer of 2019 before the pandemic. So that was kind of like the highlight of like my professionalism in my field of chaplaincy. So in terms of me, I've been a Muslim since '96. I'm 42 years old now. So I've been Muslim since '96. I've been Muslim since 14 to 9th grade. And what's interesting is that what led me to al-Islam is not the same thing that led me away from Judeo-Christianity. So what led me away from Judeo-Christianity was the Trinity. And that's a very common theme among Muslim reverts, especially Muslim reverts in like the Western Hemisphere, disagreeing intellectually with the concept of the Trinity. But like I said, for myself, me disagreeing with the Trinity is not what led me to al-Islam. What led me to al-Islam is actually just reading the English translation of the Qur'an itself. And the irony is that my math teacher, my 9th grade math teacher, who's not Muslim, he actually bought a translation of the Qur'an for me. And the English translation of the Qur'an was literally the first religious book that I ever read cover to cover. So I received the English translation of the Qur'an in October 1996. I ended up becoming Muslim December of 1996. I've been Muslim ever since. So in terms of my profession, I've been a chaplain since 2014. And it's been a really eye-opener in terms of how I view the world. Because I'll be honest, I was very blindsided as to how apathetic the world is prior to chaplaincy. Like, I knew people didn't give a damn about other people, but when I became a chaplain, Allah gave me this extra emphasis of what is known in Arabic language as al-basira, vision, which is a combination of 3 things: foresight, insight, hindsight. So foresight is you're able to see something before it happens. You have clarity about something before it happens. Insight is when you have clarity about something while it's happening. Hindsight is to have clarity about something after it takes place. So all 3 of those things combined in the Arabic language is known as al-basira, vision. So Allah gave me this type of basira into how apathetic, how careless the world is after I started chaplaincy. It was just so many things about human nature, human behavior, I was completely blindsided about prior to chaplaincy. So with my chaplaincy profession, I try really hard to be able to reach people where other people are not willing to reach them. Their dark places, their dark spaces. And I always try to provide empathy and hope for people. And I always try to give people tools of empowerment so that they can fix themselves. Because one of the things about chaplaincy is that we learn is that no one can fix you except you. No one can fix us except us. And Allah actually speaks to this in the Quran in chapter 5, verse 105. Allah says, "Those who believe pay attention, upon you are yourselves." So and also Allah says in chapter 13, verse 11, Allah says, "Verily, Allah doesn't change what's within any people until they change what's within themselves." So just like Gandhi said, be the change you want to see. We have to be the change we want to see. So if we see things that are faulty or flawed within us, we have to change us. And speaking to what you mentioned about the xenophobic epithets at your establishment, and how you mentioned that it triggered people. We were talking about this earlier, is that the concept of nature versus nurture, social inheritance. From the time that Allah activates the sense of hearing in the wombs of our mothers from the second trimester to age 10, any and all of our human experiences, they have the potential to perpetually affect us, positively or negatively, as long as we live. So when you mentioned about those people who grew up in the South, I'm sure they've seen some very horrible, horrendous things that they dare not speak about because it's too painful, or that they don't have enough people in their corner who are empathetic enough to allow them that window to share. Because a lot of people, they want to open up, they want to pour out those toxic things about, but they don't have enough people who care. Or they think that people don't care, which brings what you mentioned about men's issues. It's a known fact that all across the board, regardless of religious identity, regardless of ethnocentric identity, regardless of culture, men die from suicide attempts 4 times more than women do, in spite of the fact that women attempt suicide 3 times more than men do. And there's a whole host of reasons how and why that is.
I'm sure that's higher in black men as well, too.
No, it's across the board. It's across the board. One of the reasons how and why is because of sexual abuse. Because as my profession as a chaplain, at least 98% of people who I've counseled pertaining to suicide, they were sexually abused at least once during their lifetimes. And then conversely, at least 98% of people who I know personally who've attempted suicide, 98% of people who I've counseled who were sexually abused, they attempted suicide at least once during their lifetime. So it's a very strong correlation between suicide and sexual abuse. And I just, professionally, I have this theory that at least 50% of all of societal vices stems from domestic life and human experiences from the second trimester to age 10. And there's a lot of vices that are directly connected to sexual abuse, a lot. And going back to these, like, really getting my hands dirty, these are things that a lot of people, even chaplains, even Muslim chaplains, they're not willing to really, like, get their hands dirty with these types of issues. So that's just a very...
That's a good point, because sexuality and talking about sexuality in a lot of religious areas